My name is Miguel Torres. I work for TIBCO Labs. It's under office of the CTO at TIBCO, and we have some different projects. And this one specifically is around blockchain and smart contracts. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of an introduction of what Dovetail is and why it's important, and then we're gonna look into the different ways of getting started and getting like a very hello world and your setup to get smart contracts using Dovetail real fast. So just real quick, why are smart contracts important? Basically, as we know, a smart contract is the business logic that runs on top of a blockchain. So basically, it just creates and embeds trust into a business process. We're not going to go into blockchain deep right now because this is a introduction, but basically also execute the precise transactions instantly. So the difference is that it adds some redundancy on the validation for those transactions. And then so Dovetail, basically what it allows you to do is, and smart contracts is, apart from being a lot of them out there, they all have their different syntax and different programming languages. So what we're trying to do is simplify all that. We're trying to simplify the development by having a UI that allows you to model your smart contract logic in a simpler way, and also expose that as API, and that will enable you to expose your smart contract as if it was a different or a normal REST API, for instance. So the value proposition for Dovetail is what we talked about, right? We are enhancing security. Since you can expose a smart contract as a normal REST API, then there is no difference. The people don't need to know that you're using a blockchain, right? You're just inheriting all that security. And we're simplifying the deployment and the development by just having a drag and drop approach for modeling smart contracts. You can integrate automatically by generating some client interface and exposing that as API. So some of the key capabilities are the visual representation. Now we will see an example of how it looks like. So it lowers the bar of the adoption, and this is the way you can audit those smart contracts because you have a visual representation. You have a better input and output model where you have your static definition of the parameters that can eliminate some of the error-prone programming errors when you're trying to map data inside and outside of the system. Your business logic gets abstracted from your programming language or from your smart contract. So you have a better way of reducing the vendor lock-in. And then you have a better interoperability because now you have all your data into a model that you can generate clients over it. And quickly, just a little bit of introduction on how does that work underneath. So in this case, you will have on the top left side, your client application, which is powered by Flogo. And we'll see an example of it. It's just basically a REST API that has been fed some metadata from the smart contract. And this smart contract is also an application that is powered by with different set of extensions, which are smart contract specific. So basically, as we'll see, the look and feel and the way to develop a client application and a smart contract is exactly the same. You're using the different extensions to achieve the same, the different means, basically. Once you have the client application and the smart contract, your smart contract, you deploy it into your blockchain runtime. In this case, we're looking into hyperledger, but we support also R3 Corda. And and that can live in either of those clouds. We're cloud agnostic. And then once you have that blockchain running, then your client application through that metadata knows how to invoke it. So you are effectively exposing that smart contract as a REST API. So let's go a little bit on how to get started. Okay, so the main page to check out is this TIBCO software.github.io TIBCO labs. In here, there is a compilation of all of our projects, starting from IoT, we have augmented reality, we have blockchain, Dovetail, which is the one we're talking about right now. You have the natural language processing, you have cloud starters to do applications real quick in the cloud. You have machine learning, process mining, you have graph technology, etc. So since we're on Project Dovetail, you can click on the GitHub, and that takes you to the main page. Here, then you just go to your documentation, and the best way to get started is to just start with one of these labs. This is like a really quick hello world tutorial that guides you through all the different steps. Okay, so let's go into this Fabric Hello World tutorial. Fabric Hello World tutorial looks like this. We have a client application that we talked about, which is just a normal REST application with a get and a post. And then you have the runtime, which is your smart contract that has a get and a set as well. So this is what we're gonna look into, right? So the first thing that you need is to load your Fabric extensions. We're gonna have through all these steps, right? So the first thing is to load your Fabric extensions. There are a couple of ways to do this. One is the TIBCO cloud integration, and the second one is through Flogo Enterprise. Here, we're just going to look into the TIBCO cloud integration for this demo. So basically, you just go into your TIBCO cloud, and you go into your integration tab, and in integration apps, you just wait for them to pop out. And this is the development environment for Flogo, where we can also develop your smart contracts. So here, the first thing you have to do is to select the extension tabs here in your environment tools. You have your extension tab here. And here, what we're going to do is to upload the smart contract specific ones. So if you keep going here in your releases repo, here you have the extensions that you want to load. So if you download these two zip files, then through your cloud integration upload button, here you would pick from a zip file, and then you browse and upload the extension for Fabric. I have already uploaded them, so you will have these two new ones, which are basically a one-to-one mapping between your Fabric APIs and your Dovetail activities, basically. So this one is for just getting a customer ID. You can get the history put. If you're familiar with Hyperledger Fabric, you identify all these activities that correspond to your APIs. And then the second one is to allow you to talk from the client, which is just basically a REST API, a REST application, to your application, to your smart contract. So you will have your Fabric listener, and then you have your connector, which is the one that receives some of the metadata to connect to the smart contract, and then you have the request, which is an activity that actually talks to the blockchain. So let's see how some of the examples look like, right? So the next step is to create a smart contract. In here, you can either start from scratch, or you can actually use one of the examples that we've done. Here, if we go to one folder, we can download the Hello World Fabric. that we provide as an example. And you can go back to your apps. And what we're going to do is to create one app. So we can create a flow app. You create a new app, and we can call it Demo Hello World, for instance. And here we can import that application, browse, and we can go to dev TIBCO software demo Project Dovetail, and there. So here you upload it. It tells you some of warnings about the passwords, etc., and then you import everything. And here it is, right? You have your smart contract template that we've provided with a hello world. So a few things to highlight. The first one is your trigger, which is your transaction trigger that actually tells the framework that you are a smart contract, basically. And then you have different flows. For instance, the simplest one is the get value. So you were just logging, and we're just logging a message here inside get value, and then what we're doing is getting something from the blockchain. So we're just defining a key that we pass it as the parameter, and we're just basically getting that key and then return it and pass it as an output here. So we have a result, the key value, and then result. The key value is the one that would return. So it's just basically a set of mappings. We call that smart contract, we log something, we get it, and then we return it. And that's pretty much it. Like there is like very little code or nothing at all. If you just click in here, this will get auto-populated, and then you have your key set, like your get set key smart contract, basically. So that's one example. Then after you have that, you want to build that, right? So the first thing that you have to do is to clone your Dovetail application. So you can clone this, and this is going to give us the tools to build your application. So here under Dovetail tools, it tells you how to build those things. So let's wait a little bit, and while we wait on that, we can have a look at how to create a client application as well. So the client application, as we said, is the same as a smart contract, but it just uses different extensions. So we have a different template here. So we can save that link as the client there. And then here in our apps, we're going to create a different apps, which is the client. Same thing, just logo. We can do demo, hello world, client. And we can import it. We could also create it from scratch, but it's better to start with something already defined. Then once we import it, we're going to see, okay, the differences are, this is an HTTP trigger instead of the chain code one. So what it's telling here is that this application is an HTTP trigger. It's an HTTP application, REST endpoint. And basically, if we follow the get request, it's very similar to the other one. So it logs a value here. And then here, instead of talking to the blockchain directly, what we're doing is talking to the smart contract. You see the difference here. Here, what we're going to say is, okay, we're going to talk to this smart contract that I know is deployed, and this is going to get this is going to be a get, and it's going to invoke it, and it has some input parameters that you can map. So, for instance, the key name, you can map it to the path parameter's name, etc., etc. And then the same thing. Once you're done, your data name is going to be returned. And then that gets passed all the way up into that. So let's see if this still close. So after you have that, you're going to do the same thing. We're only going to build the smart contract right now, but it will be the same thing. Instead of having a command to build the smart contract, you have a different command, and that will be build your application. So another thing is, once you have this smart contract, Hyperledger Fabric, so you will get this CDS file and will deploy it in your Hyperledger Fabric instance, and it will run just the same way. The way this works is we have Flogo it's a Golang engine that interprets JSON models. So what we have is this JSON model that we can have a look at that defines your actual smart contract. So it's just basically defining all these different steps, and it gathers all these different activities and runs them sequentially. So that's how it achieves that modularity, where you can actually define your different activities and applications, and they all get bundled together and then get run one by one. That's that. Another thing to look into is, these are just the Hello World tutorial, but we'll have more advanced tutorials in our Dovetail contrib. So for instance, we have an example of every single demo and examples that Hyperledger comes with. What we've done is we've mapped them with Dovetail. So it'd be a very good way to map the code-based ones with the ones that we've done. And as well as doing one-to-one mapping with their examples, we have created our own IOU, which is the most advanced example we have. That basically it's sort of like a cross-border payment system that has all the instructions here. You can have a look at that one as well, and it allows you to run it and deploy it and execute all that. So basically that's that. So another thing to look into as well is, that was the Hyperledger Labs. We have also a Corda IoT tutorial to follow. The setup is pretty much the same. Instead of loading your Hyperledger extensions, you will just load your Corda, and then you have different commands using our CLI to build them and deploy them. So yep, basically we can have a look at how to build that smart contract here to see how easy it is. So once you have your Dovetail tools, download them. You just call a build script and pass them some parameters pointing at your JSON file, and that will create your CDS file, and that's the one that it's actually a smart contract. With that, you can also build your client application as well. So the difference is, instead of running this command CDS, you just run the client, and we have another different build options. But with that, I think yeah, that's some of the things we had to show, and some more available resources.